History is filled with powerful men, kings, emperors, sultans, men who built empires, waged wars, and left their mark on the world. But what happens when a man's ambition is not just to conquer lands, but to conquer life itself? To create a legacy not of stone, but of bloodline. A legacy so vast, it defies belief. What if I told you that one man fathered more children than most villages have people? That he kept a harem of over 500 women, and that every single conquest, every single birth, was meticulously documented? This is not a myth. This is not a legend. This is the story of a king whose obsession with power and procreation pushed the very limits of human biology. This is the story of the man who wanted to become his own nation, the warrior king, the bloodthirsty sultan, the most prolific father in all of recorded history. Today, we open the ledgers of a king whose reign was defined by two things: absolute power and an insatiable desire to create life, often through the most brutal means imaginable. This is Dark Chronicles. Our story begins in 1672, in a Morocco torn apart by civil war. The Alawi dynasty was new, its grip on power fragile. When the Sultan, Moulay Rashid, died in a riding accident, his half-brother stepped into the chaos. His name was Moulay Ismail ibn Sharif. He was not a man of peace. He was a warrior, forged in the brutal politics of his time. For years he fought his own nephew for the throne, crushing rebellions with merciless efficiency. He understood that to rule, he needed an army loyal not to a tribe or a region, but to him alone. And so, he created the Black Guard, an army of over 150,000 black slaves, purchased as children, raised in his palaces, and taught that their only purpose was to serve the Sultan. They were his personal instrument of power, and with them, he unified Morocco. He drove the Europeans from the coastal cities, fought the Ottoman Empire to a standstill, and built a centralized state that answered to one man. He made the city of Meknes his capital, transforming it into a fortress city, a Moroccan Versailles built on a scale that rivaled the grandest capitals of Europe. Its walls stretched for over 40 kilometers. Its palaces were vast, its gardens sprawling, its mosques magnificent. And it was all built by the hands of thousands of Christian slaves, captured by his corsair fleet and worked to death under the Moroccan sun. Moulay Ismail was a nation builder, a military genius, a contemporary of Louis XIV of France, and in many ways his equal. But behind the walls of his grand palace in Meknes, another darker ambition was taking shape, an ambition that would make him a legend. To understand the mind of this complex and terrifying ruler, subscribe to Dark Chronicles, because the empire he built in public was nothing compared to the one he was building in private. While Moulay Ismail was building his empire of stone and steel, he was also building an empire of flesh and blood. His harem was not just a collection of beautiful women, it was a state institution, a symbol of his absolute power and the engine of his ultimate ambition. The numbers are staggering, and they come to us from a reliable source, a French diplomat named Dominique Bunneau, who visited Morocco on 3 separate occasions to negotiate the release of Christian slaves. In 1704, after 32 years of rule, Busnot documented that the 57-year-old sultan had 4 wives, the legal limit under Islamic law, and 500 concubines. From this harem, Busnot reported that the sultan had already sired 600 sons. The number of daughters was not officially recorded, for a chilling reason. Daughters born to his 4 legal wives were allowed to live. But according to Busnot, any daughter born to a concubine was suffocated at birth by the midwives. By the time of his death in 1727, the Guinness Book of World Records confirms that Moulay Ismail had fathered 888 children. Some historical estimates place the total number, including the unrecorded daughters, at over 1,100. Think about that. One man. Over 1,000 children. He wasn't just a king. He was a patriarch on a biblical scale. How is this even possible? How does one man manage a harem of 500 women and produce a child on average every 2 weeks for his entire adult life? The answer lies in a system of terrifying efficiency and brutal control. If you find these deep dives into the dark side of history compelling, support our channel by subscribing. The truth is always in the details. This was not a chaotic free-for-all. It was a meticulously organized system designed for one purpose: procreation. The harem was a constantly revolving door. Women were acquired from all over the world, captured by corsairs, purchased at slave markets, or received as diplomatic gifts. They entered the harem as teenagers, and they were expelled at the age of 30, ensuring the sultan always had a pool of the most fertile women. Palace officials, known as eunuchs, managed the daily operations. They kept detailed records: the name of every woman, her origin, her health, and her menstrual cycle. Each day, the sultan would consult these records and select a woman for the night. This was not about romance or pleasure. It was about reproductive strategy. And then there is the title of our investigation: 50,000 lovers. Where does this number come from? It's not the number of women, it's a modern calculation. In 2014, a team of scientists at the University of Vienna published a study in the journal PLOS I. They wanted to know if it was biologically possible for one man to father so many children. They ran a computer simulation. The results were shocking. To achieve 888 children over 55 years, Moulay Ismail would have needed to have sex, on average, 1.2 times per day, every single day of his reign. That's over 20,000 sexual encounters. The 50,000 is an exaggeration, but the reality is no less astounding. It was a lifetime dedicated to procreation, a relentless daily pursuit of a biological legacy. But this system could only function through one thing: terror. Moulay Ismail was obsessed with paternity security. He had to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that every child born within his palace walls was his. And he enforced this certainty with a level of brutality that earned him his European nickname, the Bloodthirsty. Any woman in his harem suspected of adultery, even of simply looking at another man, was subject to horrific punishment. According to Busnot, the Sultan would personally carry out the sentences. The women were either strangled by his own hands, or he would order their breasts to be cut off, or their teeth to be torn out. This terror extended beyond the palace walls. Any man who was even caught looking at one of his wives or concubines as they passed through the city was punished by immediate death. The grounds of his palace were said to be littered with the bodies of those who transgressed his rules. He reportedly killed over 30,000 people during his reign, often for the most minor of infractions. He wasn't just creating life. He was the sole arbiter of death. His power was absolute, and he wielded it without mercy. This level of cruelty is almost impossible to comprehend. It raises a fundamental question: what kind of mind is capable of such a thing? What drives a man to build a legacy on a foundation of fear and blood? We believe that understanding the darkest parts of history is crucial to understanding ourselves. If you agree, join our community of investigators at Dark Chronicles. Why? Why the obsession with having so many children? Why the need for such brutal control? The answer lies in the psychology of absolute power. From an evolutionary perspective, it's simple. The male reproductive strategy is to maximize offspring. Most men are constrained by resources, by social norms, by the choices of their partners. Moulay Ismail had no constraints. He was a king. He had the resources of a nation at his disposal. His harem was the ultimate expression of this biological imperative, unchecked by any moral or social boundary. Politically, it was a strategy. More sons meant more loyal governors, more generals for his armies, a dynasty that could spread to every corner of his kingdom. He was attempting to populate his entire ruling class with his own blood. But on a personal level, it was something deeper. It was about legacy. A man who builds a palace knows it will one day crumble. A man who wins a war knows that borders can be redrawn. But a man who creates 1,000 children, he achieves a kind of immortality. His bloodline becomes a river, flowing through generations. It was narcissism on a genetic scale. He didn't just want to rule Morocco. He wanted to become Morocco. And the documentation, the meticulous records, that was the ultimate act of control. It wasn't enough to have the children. He had to own the data. Every name in his ledger was a testament to his power, a number in his grand equation of self-deification. Moulay Ismail died in 1727 at the age of 81. His 55-year reign was the longest in Moroccan history, but the legacy he so carefully constructed immediately backfired. The sheer number of his sons, all with a claim to the throne, plunged the country into a brutal 30-year civil war known as the 30 Years' Anarchy. The empire he built with an iron fist was torn apart by his own blood. Today, he is remembered in Morocco as the Warrior King, the unifier of the nation. His grand palaces are tourist attractions, but his darker legacy, the story of the 500 women in his harem, the thousands of slaves worked to death, the daughters suffocated at birth, and the 88 children born of a brutal, systematic obsession, is a story that is often whispered but rarely told in its entirety. It is a chilling reminder that absolute power does not just corrupt, it consumes. It devours morality, empathy, and humanity itself, leaving behind only the cold, hard numbers of a legacy written in blood and ink. What do you think drove Moulay Ismail's obsession? Was it a strategic master plan or the madness of a tyrant? Let us know your theories in the comments below. The darkest figures in history are often the most complex, and it is our mission at Dark Chronicles to explore that complexity. If you want to join us on our next investigation, make sure you are subscribed and have hit the notification bell. The past is never truly dead, and it is full of secrets.